that marketers have a huge opportunity to prove their contribution to the organization. There's more tools, technologies, and smart marketers taking this on, and we have this opportunity to prove our value, get a larger seat at the table. So to do this, marketers need a way to run marketing more like a business and not just a function. Think like a general manager and less like a functional lead. Think like a business owner, not just a cog in the machine. And this is really where Tim West and Box's story come in. They've focused on a lot of these areas, and they have some great learnings to tell everybody on this webinar and beyond. So Tim, I'm going to hand it over to you. Quickly, I'm just going to introduce Tim as the Senior Manager of Marketing Operations at Box. He's got an awesome story. So why don't you take it from here, Tim? Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Sam. So hello, everyone. My name is Tim West, and I've been at Box for about 2.5 years now. My recent focus has been on funnel optimization, which includes lead scoring and routing, sales and marketing enablement, process automation, and of course, marketing ROI. So before we get into pipeline attribution models and measuring marketing efficiency, I do want to say a little bit about Box in case I'm on the phone or unfamiliar. Box is a cloud content management company focused primarily on the primarily on the enterprise. We have dozens of custom applications, including Box Notes and Box Capture for photos. We have 82,000 customers using Box globally, and 69% of the Fortune 500 trust Box to manage their content in the cloud. Over the last few years, we've seen significant revenue growth, averaging about 32% year over year. At Box, we're constantly innovating and releasing new products that allow our customers to manage and collaborate on content more securely and more effectively than ever before. This year, we released a new product called Box Skills that applies the power of machine learning and artificial intelligence to content in the cloud. So now let's get to Box's journey to marketing ROI. I'll walk you through the challenge that we faced on both sides of the ROI equation, how that challenge ultimately led to a tipping point, and the decision to implement Allocadia and leverage Salesforce data with Tableau to visualize our ROI insights. I'll then go into the results and benefits of that decision, and finally, I'll share today's opportunity and how we can leverage that data to make decisions. This journey began when Box committed to Wall Street to become a billion-dollar company by 2020. And this was a plan that was put in place by finance. As part of this plan, we brought in Carrie Palin as our new CMO to lead the marketing organization. So we were at a point where we knew how much revenue we need to generate each quarter. And because we knew our pipeline to revenue conversion rate, we knew how much pipeline marketing needed to contribute to the business. However, our CMO knew that marketing budgets were not going to grow at the same rate as revenue needed to grow. So something had to change. We had to do more with less. However, at Box, we didn't know which marketing tactics were performing most efficiently. We were on a last touch attribution model, which inevitably favors some tactics over others. Tactics such as content syndication or SEM are never going to source $1 million deal on a last touch model. Because of this, there was lots of finger pointing and bickering within the marketing organization, arguing over credit. We were spending too much time fighting over the pie, not working together to grow the pie. So our productivity was stagnant, and our inability to measure efficiency was twofold. On the one hand, we had an ineffective attribution model that didn't accurately credit marketing campaigns with the pipeline that they generated for the business. And on the other hand, we had virtually no way of tracking marketing expenditures. We didn't know where or how we were spending our dollars. So we couldn't do more with less if we didn't even have a baseline measurement to begin with. And because of this, marketing was relying on gut instinct to make decisions. On the spend side of things, we were unsure if we were ahead, behind, or on track to spend our budgets within quarter. We couldn't do any sort of financial analysis on our marketing's performance because we didn't have the available investment data. And lastly, we didn't have a fair attribution model that accurately credited campaigns with the pipeline they contributed. So as an operations team, we took all of these problems and boiled them down to a single critical question. What is the most efficient way to drive pipeline? Where do we spend that next marketing dollar? And I do want to stress the importance of efficiency. Marketing campaigns should not be evaluated exclusively based on total pipeline contribution. Without layering in some sort of financial data, the exercise is ultimately meaningless. If I give a demand gen marketer another $1 million of programmatic budget, of course they're going to be able to generate more pipeline. And if efficiency wasn't a concern at Box, we'd host our user conference, BoxWorks, every month because of the total amount of pipeline it generates for the business. But obviously, this is not scalable. So the reality of the situation was that we lacked complete confidence in any sort of ROI measurements, and we didn't even have the systems in place to begin measuring our marketing's efficiency.
So Tim, I'm just going to jump in, and I really appreciate how you set up this kind of the problem you guys are taking on here. And one area that I want to dig into a little bit more, you touch on it and you do a good job of explaining, is this idea of the efficiency of pipeline. Can you just talk about the risk of marketers? So a lot of marketers are just like, give me more and more and more pipeline, which obviously pipeline is important. But what's the risk of ignoring or not getting to that question of efficiency? I guess what risks face those marketers that aren't thinking about efficiency? They're only thinking about volume.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in total pipeline contribution, but it's really going to hinder your growth if you don't focus on growing as efficiently as possible. You constantly need to optimize. And with the level of scrutiny applied to marketing budgets these days, it's important that you're continually optimizing your tactic mix, especially when resources are scarce. We all know that budgets are extremely scarce these days.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's
okay,
very helpful. I appreciate it. Keep going on. There you go.
Okay, so that we ultimately came to a tipping point. We knew where we needed to be in terms of revenue. Now we need to figure out how we're going to get there. We need to begin tracking our spend with rigor, and we needed to create a fair and accurate attribution model. And lastly, we needed to connect those two data points to get a measurement of pipeline efficiency. So as an ops team, we got to work, and we broke the ROI equation into two individual components: the return, or pipeline in the marketing world, and investment in marketing spend. I'll walk everyone through the issues we faced on both sides of the equation, and how we implemented a solution on each, and lastly, how we connected those two to begin measuring marketing's ROI. Let's start on the investment side of the equation. So I'd be curious to know how many people use spreadsheets to track marketing budgets. And I imagine that many would agree that this is definitely not the best tool for the job. And we ran into the same issues at Box. But we were in spreadsheet hell. Despite being a cloud-based company, we had significant issues with version control because too many people were trying to make edits to the same file at the same time. Additionally, we had no validation in place, so it was difficult to determine which line items were complete, which lines were incomplete, and when they were last edited. We also had no metadata associated to our line items. So without being the budget owner and actually having that context, it was nearly impossible to truly understand where and how our dollars were being spent. But marketers are not accountants, so it's important that they're not spending their time in Excel sheets trying to get formulas to work and columns to balance. So because of that, we had several issues that we needed to fix. With several versions of the same Excel file, it caused us to have inaccurate data. We actually had a full-time contractor to manage the budgeting process, which was inefficient and a complete waste of resources. We also had no actuals flowing in from finance. We had no confidence in our financial data. And when we finally closed out that Excel file at the end of each quarter, the insights were 3 to 4 months old, so they were not actionable. So Sam, I did shamelessly steal this slide from you, but that's because it resonated with us at Box. The impact to the business was significant. And we were losing time because of unnecessary and repetitive tasks. We were losing money because we didn't know with confidence where we were underspending or where we were overspending. We were certainly losing pipeline because the one thing that we did know for sure was that our spend levels were not optimized. This led to a lack of confidence in marketing being able to get us to that billion-dollar company. So I'll walk you through some issues we were facing on the return side of the equation as well. So as I mentioned previously, Box was on a last touch attribution model. However, we could not get any sort of internal agreement on this model. Again, last touch favors mid-funnel activities like events and webinars, and risks defunding some top-of-funnel activities that are still important in order to hit your pipeline goals. We did have issues with data quality as well. We were putting bad data into the system, so of course we're going to get bad insights out on the back end. We did try to implement an attribution model using external vendors, but ultimately those models fell short and caused more confusion than clarity. So this is a crude illustration of our last touch attribution model. As you can see, several contacts at a single account may engage with a variety of marketing campaigns. However, only one of these contacts can become an MQL and then an SQL or an opportunity. So that opportunities pipeline is attributed to only one campaign. So this model potentially does not credit campaigns that did contribute to the creation of that opportunity in Salesforce. When we approached the business analytics team with this problem, their feedback was clear. They felt that if they don't build the model, they're not going to trust it. And that's fair. Analysts are not going to put data into what's essentially a black box and then trust the insights on the other side. They wanted complete ownership of the model. When we talked to the marketing team, their sentiment was clear as well. They felt that the model was off and it didn't provide a fair view in terms of attribution. And they were right. We were at risk of defunding some top of funnel activities because they weren't sourcing the big deals. And everyone feels like they're getting the short end of the stick on a last touch attribution model. We knew that we had to get internal agreement from our marketing team, or else the bickering and the arguing over credit would continue. We did approach the sales organization, try to get their help in fixing our data. But if anyone's launched a change management program within a sales organization, we know it's an uphill battle. And that's reasonable. Sales reps should not have to input additional data into the system exclusively to benefit marketing. So we did try to leverage Salesforce and put our financial information there, but Salesforce is a great CRM, but it's not a financial tracking tool. Any sort of sophisticated calculation still had to be done manually, which led to outdated data. And when we did complete the analysis, the insights were too high level. Our initial analysis told us that field events perform well. Yes, but which field events in which regions leveraging which messaging perform better over others? These are the questions that we're still unable to answer. So we didn't have any way to connect our return data to our investment data. After all of this, our CMO is still asking us, what are our most efficient marketing campaigns? We still didn't have an answer. We couldn't say with confidence where we should spend our next marketing dollar. We knew to meet our business objectives, we had to get these problems solved.
Great. So Tim, that's a great. So actually, I've got a question for Tim, but before I do that, what I'd love to know from the folks on the line, just like how many of you, like just say yes or no, are using spreadsheets for your marketing investment? Because Tim, tracking marketing investment, marketing spend, because Tim asked that question. We did this presentation back at Serious Decision Summit a few weeks ago, and a bunch of people in the room raised their hand. But I'd love to just kind of poll the audience a bit there. We don't have a poll up, but just in the chat, pop in what you're using today for managing marketing investments and whether it's spreadsheets or not. I think it'd just be interesting to kind of track that. So I'd ask this, Tim. So what I really like is you breaking out the R and the I here. And we see this with some of our customers, some of our most successful customers. They actually break them out before they bring them together for ROI. And a lot of marketers, again, they're like, I need to measure ROI, but they don't think about it in terms of the different data points. Like, when you think about this problem, this ROI problem, why is it so important to look at these two inputs separately?
Mm-hmm. Well, they're fundamentally different data sets that each require fundamentally different systems and processes in order to track that data. Additionally, to your point, Sam, when you talk about ROI, getting to a point where we can measure marketing ROI is a massive project. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of people need to be involved. So it's important to break those types of projects into bite-sized chunks. Additionally, there are a lot of great insights you can get just from measuring your investment data and then also measuring your return or pipeline data. So by breaking these out, you're able to celebrate those quick wins along the journey to marketing ROI.
Great. And just before you get going to the next section, I'm seeing a lot, pretty much everyone up there is saying, yeah, I'm using it in the chat, saying they're using Excel spreadsheets. So I think, if anyone isn't, it'd be interesting to know what you are using. So why don't you keep going, Tim?
Yep. Yeah, that's what I expected. So everyone, I feel your pain on those spreadsheets. Great, so now let's get to the decision to do something about this ROI. And I'll walk you through the solution first on the investment side, and then we'll move to the return side. So when evaluating solutions on the investment side, our requirements were clear. First, we needed a clean and easy-to-use system. Again, marketers are not accountants, and they shouldn't have to spend their time balancing spreadsheets. Additionally, the system had to be detailed. We wanted to know precisely where and how our marketing dollars were being spent, so we knew that metadata was a must. And lastly, as I mentioned previously, measuring marketing investment is important, but we wanted to get to that ROI, so our solution had to integrate with other systems, and that was absolutely paramount. So we ultimately decided to implement Allocadia at Box. We chose Allocadia because it's a system built by marketers for marketers, so usability is top of mind. Secondly, it's cloud-based from day one. There's no more issues with version control, and we can have access to all of the investment data right from the get-go. Allocadia is also seen as an industry leader in marketing performance management. So they know what it takes to track your investments, and they know how to get it done. And additionally, their team has been very supportive all the way from the evaluation process through implementation and now into the ongoing day-to-day management of the tool. So again, this is what we were dealing with at Box prior to implementing Allocadia. And this is what marketers actually saw when they were building and managing their marketing investments. And now this is what our marketers see here at Box. I do want to draw attention to a few key points here. So on the left, we're able to group our line items into a hierarchy using categories. These categories then aggregate the line items underneath them so you can see quickly how you're spending your money at a glance. Additionally, we're leveraging Allocadia's native Salesforce connector. So when marketers create Salesforce campaigns, they're almost immediately available in this drop-down menu on the right side. And lastly, you see we have several metadata fields available. Again, we wanted to know precisely where we were spending our dollars. So line item is not considered complete until all of these required fields are filled out. And this is one of the key reports that our finance teams leverage. So on the left side, you can see how much money was allocated to each budget. And then we can see how much was planned and then how much has been spent so far. So our finance partners can quickly see which budgets are at risk of not spending their entire budget in quarter. And then this is one of our CMO level dashboards. So you can see at the top, our CMO can quickly see how much money has been allocated to marketing, how much has been planned, and how much has been spent. Additionally, down below, these tiles highlight which budgets have overspent and which have underspent. So our CMO or any other leader can log in and quickly reallocate resources if needed. So now at this point, we've implemented Allocadia, and we're able to successfully see precisely how we're spending our dollars. Now let me get into the return side of the equation. So again, we wanted an attribution model that everyone had confidence in. We decided to partner with the business analytics team because they needed to be the driver of this project. There are a lot of ways to achieve a fractional attribution model, and there are a lot of software providers that have out-of-the-box solutions. However, at Box, due to the sophisticated needs of the business, we decided to push all of our data to a centralized data warehouse, and then to use SQL to join that data, and then we're leveraging Tableau to visualize our attribution. This is another crude illustration of our account-based fractional attribution model. You can see that a variety of campaigns may generate responses that belong to a variety of accounts. So we aggregate those campaign responses at the account level. Then, as we all know, opportunities are always associated to an account in Salesforce. So we aggregate all the opportunities and all the pipeline at the account level. We then attribute the pipeline to each of the campaign responses that took place 90 days prior to the opportunity being created. However, not all campaign responses are created equal. So we have a scale that measures the quality of the campaign engagements. On the high side of the spectrum, you see things like web trials, contact me forms, and inbound phone calls. These types of activities show a high propensity of that account to purchase Box in the very near future. As we move down the scale, you see that we also have things like attending an event or engaging with the chat tool on our website. Again, these activities show a high likelihood of that account purchasing Box. As we move down the scale, you see things like attending a webinar or a trade show, downloading a piece of content, engaging with an SEM campaign. And at the low end of the spectrum, you see things like registering but not attending one of our events, because in our model, those types of activities still receive a small piece of the pie. Additional weight is also applied to the primary contact on the opportunity. So having an attribution model that we can all agree on was a huge win. And we socialized this model early and often and got buy-in from all of our executive sponsors. I do want to say that this was not easy and this was not done overnight. But it was important to have the business analytics team be the driver of this project because they're seen as an objective party. They don't favor one team or one tactic over another. Lastly, you can't argue with when so much data analysis is thrown into the model. There was no emotions and there was no bickering involved. Everyone completely understood the model and we had complete agreement once it was implemented. I do want to say that we're never done with our attribution model, and we're always tweaking it based on the needs of the business. However, it's now operational, but we're always learning and improving. So now at this point in the journey, we have allocated implemented, so we're able to measure our marketing investments. And now we have an attribution model that credits campaigns fairly and accurately and it has internal agreement. So that was the easy part. Now I want to get into how we connected the R and the I. I'll share a high-level overview of our ROI measurements, and then I'll get into details of exactly how we did it. So I'm going to walk you through how data flows through each of our systems from the perspective of a marketer. So first, it all starts in Allocadia. This is where financial plans are built. The plans must be submitted and then approved by our CMO. Once the plans are approved, marketers are able to obtain their Allocadia line item IDs that's associated to every single line item. They then copy and paste this Allocadia ID into the PO. So we use Coupa at Box as a purchase requisition software, but there are tons of vendors that have the same functionality. Once the POs are created, the marketers can then go back and connect and create their campaigns in Salesforce. Again, these campaigns then are visible in the Salesforce campaign dropdown in Allocadia. So they must go back into Allocadia and quickly select the campaign that they created. So at this point, we have an Allocadia line item that has an Allocadia ID that is pasted on the PO. Now we also have a Salesforce campaign that is created, and that is the object that will actually receive the pipeline attribution. So we push both of these data points into our data warehouse, and then we can join them using SQL. And then we can develop an ROI dashboard that is visualized in Tableau. That's just one example of a dashboard. I'll get into how we measure ROI in a few minutes. So how do we make this happen? I do want to say that diligent financial tracking is a must. Again, we have tons of meta tags within Allocadia, so we know precisely where and how our marketing dollars are being spent. Additionally, it's very important that you train your users. It's critical that each marketer understands what's expected of them and knows how to use new softwares and knows how to execute new processes so everyone is confident in the analysis on the back end. Additionally, it's important to think about how you're going to connect the two data sets before thinking about the actual ROI output. There are a variety of ways to measure marketing ROI, and none is necessarily correct. We pushed all of our data into a centralized data warehouse, but there are other ways to join the two data points to measure marketing ROI. And lastly, it's important to ask the right questions about ROI so you know that you're meeting the needs of the business. That's what I'll get into right now. I want to go into precisely how Box is leveraging our ROI measurements. We look at ROI through two separate lenses, which we affectionately call vehicle campaigns and response campaigns. The vehicle campaigns are the traffic drivers or the generators that the responses come through. So these are things like content syndication, display, or SEM. And this is where most of our programmatic dollars are allocated. On the flip side of that, we have response campaigns. Response campaigns represent the offer or the content the response is engaged with. So these are things like ebooks, analyst reports, white papers, webinars, and field events. And these response campaigns are what actually receive the MQLs when they're generated. This is because the response campaign or the content is really what has the contextual information that sales reps need in order to initiate that initial follow-up. And these campaigns are actually Salesforce campaign records in our system. The technology we use to associate a single response to two campaigns is not that sophisticated. We use UTM parameters and a custom URL builders to essentially associate each response to 2 campaigns. Here's an example of our URL builder now. You can see there's a variety of UTM parameters. One of them is a Salesforce campaign ID that represents the vehicle campaign. So when a visitor clicks on this link, they're taken to a form. This form represents the response campaign. The UTM parameters are then populated in the URL, and then those populate hidden fields behind this form. So when the form is submitted, the response is associated to the response campaign. In this case, it's a web trial campaign. And then a secondary field is populated with the vehicle campaign. This is an actual screenshot of our campaign member object in Salesforce. So as you can see, this person downloaded a Forrester encryption analyst report, but they found that report from an SEM campaign. So you can see that the vehicle in this case is a US SEM always on Bing campaign, and that's how they found the Forrester analyst report. So using this framework, we're able to measure ROI effectively. This is an example of one of our ROI dashboards. Looking at this, I can see that email generates pipeline very efficiently, but it hasn't generated a ton of pipeline so far. So we might have a discussion on how we can spin up some more email campaigns in order to generate more pipeline. Additionally, I can see that both first-party events and third-party events generate significant pipeline. The third-party events generate pipeline much more efficiently. So we might have a conversation on reallocating some funds away from first-party events into third-party events. And these are just some of the examples of conversations that we can have now that we're able to harness our ROI measurements effectively. And these aren't arguments. These are simply people looking at dashboards and then making decisions based on the data.
Great, Tim. That's a great section. I love this section. I remember when we were starting to create this presentation and just listening to the story, and it was like I was sitting there nodding my head like, yeah, this is going to be great. I know it resonates to me as a marketer. So first of all, appreciate you walking us through this. Couple things. We've got a bunch of great questions that are coming in. We're going to try and get to those at the end. One point that, Tim, you brought up that really resonated with me as well is your point that there's multiple views of ROI, multiple ways to measure ROI, and it's not about the correct or right way. At Allocadia, we actually have an ebook about it, about I think there's 3 different ways that Allocadia helps marketers measure ROI. We can follow up with folks on the call with that doc, with that ebook. You can email me directly. You'll get my email at the end. You can pop this into the Q&A. If you're interested, pop it into the Q&A now, and we can send that off to you, and we'll have our team follow up. So that's a great point, Tim. And the one question that I come out from this section is, this is obviously not a, 1 week and done project to get all of these systems and data together. You use a few technologies. You talk about Salesforce, Tableau, you got a data warehouse, you got Allocadia. Can you just talk about the importance of finding the right technologies and really partners when you take on a wide-ranging project like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of softwares out there in the MarTech world. So it's important to find softwares that really work for your business and also that work for your team. There's varying levels of sophistication when it comes to choosing a software. So it's important to choose a software that you're comfortable with your team using on a day-to-day basis. Additionally, it's important to make sure that each software is going to integrate with one another. You don't want to operate softwares in silos. The integration needs to be as seamless as possible so that you can get all of that data into a single place and really build that tech stack that's going to fulfill the needs of the business.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, so now that we have ROI measurements in place, I want to talk to everyone about the results and benefits that the Box has seen thanks to the help of Allocadia and our custom attribution model. Before we started this process, our pipeline to spend ratio was about 4 to 1, meaning for every dollar we spent, we saw about 4 come back in pipeline. Now that we have these solutions in place, we're up to 9 to 1 in terms of pipe to spend ratio. So that's a huge win. We've more than doubled our pipe to spend ratio. Additionally, we've had record-setting quarters in terms of total pipeline contribution. despite budgets not growing. So we can truly say that we've done more with less. And perhaps most importantly to me from an ops perspective, there's no more arguments over credit. There's no more bickering and there's no more fighting. We can finally focus on working together to generate as much pipeline as possible. And using Allocadia has more than nothing brought confidence to Box. So before we started this journey, I was actually at a case study of Allocadia's at a conference, and I saw someone on stage say that they achieved a less than 1% plan to spend variance. And I didn't think that was possible at Box, especially knowing what I knew at the time in terms of our lack of diligent financial tracking. But now I can say that Box has achieved the same goal. For the last 3 quarters, we've had a less than 1% plan to spend variance. We show no signs of slowing down. This has brought a lot of trust from the finance department. So we're now seen as an ally in terms of hitting a $1 billion revenue goal. Additionally, Allocadia has given us clear insights into our spend data. So we know precisely where and how we're spending our marketing dollars. And this alone is a huge win because this type of data can provide actionable insights. But now that we have an ability to measure marketing's ROI, we're able to make decisions confidently on where we need to spend that next marketing dollar. So I do want to say a few things about working with the Allocadia team for those on the phone. They come reliable and they have the best practices in mind. They've done this at a variety of different companies. They know that no 2 companies are exactly the same, so they're able to build custom implementations that work for your business and the needs of your business. Additionally, the CS team is relentlessly supportive, and they're willing to dive into the weeds with you to solve the most difficult challenges that marketers are faced with today. And lastly, Allocadia wants to see their customers succeed, which goes a long way. Now, I think my CSM was more excited than I was when we finally hit that 1% plan to spend variance. So I can't say enough good things about the Allocadia team.
All right, that's great stuff, Tim. So I think you have one more section to go, but before you do that, you're going to talk about this a little bit in these next couple of slides. But when you see like that 9 to 1 from 4 to 1 improvement is incredibly, it's amazing in a year. And when you see that kind of improvement both on effectiveness and efficiency from marketing, like you did at Box, how does the reputation of marketing change within the organization? You know, is there a different level of respect? Is it easy to get resources? Like, what does that look like when you see that type of impressively quick improvement?
Yeah, there's tons of benefits within the business. And I think we've all dealt with, to varying degrees, that headbutting between marketing and sales. So when marketing can say that we've doubled our contribution to pipeline, it's a huge win, and we get a lot of respect from the sales organization. Additionally, we're now first in line when there's incremental dollars to be divvied out. I think every organization struggles to prove their marketing ROI, but we can now go to our finance department and say, if you give us $1 more in budget, we're able to deliver 9 back in pipeline. So that's a huge win. It really has brought a lot of confidence to the marketing organization.
So I just want to highlight that, and I definitely would have put that in the slide deck if I'd heard that one before. That you get the additional incremental dollars. We have multiple customers at Allocadia who see that same benefit. But like as a marketer practitioner myself, it's like to have that confidence and that to be able to receive incremental dollars. You're no longer having to defend spend. In fact, you're getting incremental dollars because finance and the CEO trusts you to drive that business. That's an incredible achievement. I'll let you keep going forward, but I just wanted to highlight that because that's awesome.
Great. So what is today's opportunity? Finally, after all of this work, there's no more arguing over splitting the pie. Now we're working together to grow the pie or make more pies at Box, if you will. We know with confidence where we need to double down and also where we need to dial back our spend and potentially reallocate resources. Additionally, using that vehicle response framework, we're able to run more A/B tests to truly understand which messages are landing in market. And now, more than ever, we're able to focus on data-driven decisions to win bigger deals more quickly than ever before. The biggest benefit has definitely been the confidence. Because of Allocadia and our custom attribution model, we're confident that marketing will now be a driver in creating a billion-dollar company at Box.
Awesome, great. So Tim, I'm gonna walk. That was awesome. When I look at this, if I was going to pull out three things. So first of all, ROI really is two different data sources. You have the R, and then you've got the I. You need to treat them equally. Box did this very well. Separate technologies, separate workflows. Then they bring them together. But if you try and put one as more important than the other, or if you try to do everything at the exact same time in the exact same project and the exact same workflow, it's going to get challenging. So treat them as different data sources, break off the projects if you need to, but definitely put them on the same pedestal, because you're not going to get to ROI if you prioritize one over the other, or if you if you ignore, say, the I in ROI. Second is attribution. So focus on agreement versus the perfect model. Tim, I think we have a question on this, and maybe I'll bring this up, Tim. But it's often attribution. Finding the perfect attribution model can be challenging. Rather, find the best way you can use an attribution model to gain agreement across the marketing, sales, finance organization of what that kind of north light is for your organization. Because if you can get to 80 or 90% quote unquote correct, but you can get 100% agreement, that's going to make big differences within your business and how marketing runs their business of marketing. And then finally, I'd say, how can I make these dollars go the furthest? Tim, we talked about this at the very beginning. It was about efficiency, not about volume. Yeah, we as marketers want to drive as much pipeline as possible, but at a certain point, there is diminishing return for all that execution that you do. So you have to think about not just the do side, again, that execution, but the run side. Where are my dollars going? How am I being most effective and as efficient? Because at a certain point, the dollars are going to run out, and you're not going to have that ability to kind of focus in on what's working and what's not. So Tim, first question here. Let's see. So we kind of touch on this with where you pulled Coupa, where you're using Coupa, but where do you actually pull the finance data from at the campaign level? Like where do you pull that? And maybe talk to us again a little bit about the campaign ID and how that brings those two data sources as well together.
Mm-hmm. So we use Coupa to generate our POs. Those POs have an Allocadia ID, so they're associated to an Allocadia line item. Now those line items are then associated to a Salesforce campaign. So just using those three data points, we're able to join those data sets and actually measure how much we spent per campaign. And I do want to say that POs are not always created at the same level of granularity as Salesforce campaigns. So we do leverage Salesforce's parent-child relationship in terms of that campaign hierarchy. Our SQL code is able to roll pipeline up through the Salesforce campaigns and then associate all pipeline of child campaigns at that parent campaign level. So then we can create the POs kind of at that parent campaign level, and then that parent campaign can host a variety of child campaigns. You're going to get more granular in terms of which campaigns are generating pipeline.
Okay, that's great. So thanks on that one. Another question. So we talk a lot about pipeline efficiency. How do you define pipeline at Box? Like, what is that definition or classification of pipeline?
Yeah, that's going to vary widely from company to company, but we define pipeline once an opportunity reaches a certain stage. And not as soon as an opportunity is created, it's not considered pipeline. It's not actually part of the forecast, but once it does cross a certain stage that is at the discretion of the AE, that's when we consider it pipeline. And also when looking at ROI or pipe to spend ratio, it's always going to fluctuate, right? If you executed an event yesterday, today its ROI is still going to be close to zero. So we do kind of have those rolling look backs. And so we try to standardize kind of on 3-month look backs. So if a campaign has been on for 3 months or an event happened 3 months ago, how much pipeline has it generated so far from there?
Great, awesome. So that's really helpful. Let's see. So you kind of answered this. You already answered this to an extent, so I'll kind of change it. But the question was, what tool are you using for multi-touch attribution? So we know that you're using SQL and then Tableau to visualize it along with your data warehouse and your analytics team. Do you feel like for everybody that they have to go to those lengths? Do you think there's tools out there that for those folks who might not have a BA team or a lot of data analysts on their marketing org, do they need to go through those same lengths that you did?
Mm-hmm. I would say no, absolutely not. We're fortunate enough to have some very, very smart analysts and data scientists that we're able to build a custom attribution model because we want absolute control of our model itself. But there are a lot of vendors out there that do have multi-touch attribution, fractional attribution. So especially for the smaller companies and companies that aren't quite at the size of Box yet, I would actually recommend using a attribution software just so you don't have to build it in-house. You don't have to maintain it in-house.
Great, that's super helpful. So there's kind of a couple of questions on this line. Let's talk about, how long did it take to get Allocadia up and running? How long did it and what were, high level, some of the steps you had to get people out of spreadsheets? And I'd actually start by saying, I can remember I think it was December, maybe 14, 15 months ago, before you were even a customer, going on site at Box headquarters and having a conversation with you and other folks in the marketing team. And I would say, from my perspective, you guys did amazing. I know you say this isn't easy, but you did an amazing job of quickly, within almost a full year, not only implementing the software, but getting these results. That's from my perspective as outside, but I'd love to hear from you, so people hear from you about how long it took you to implement and some of the high-level steps to get people out of spreadsheets.
Yes, it took us about 3 months overall to get the system running. So if you think about just a single quarter, in terms of starting brand new processes, training users, and getting them comfortable with the new software, that is actually pretty quickly to get that done. In terms of getting marketers out of spreadsheets, obviously that's never going to be easy. A lot of marketers are stuck in habits, for a variety of reasons. But we really had the tops-down support from Carrie Palin, our CMO. She was a champion of Allocadia from day one, so that goes a long way when you have your leadership be supportive of new processes and new software. And additionally, we told the marketing team that, hey, you're going to be evaluated based on your ROI, based on your pipe-to-spend ratio of your campaign. So if you're not putting your financial plans into Allocadia, they're not going to get pulled into the ROI dashboard, and it's going to look like your campaigns are not successful or not effective or not generating as much pipeline as the rest. So I think just having those things aligned, both in terms of executive support and the system and process to measure campaign effectiveness, that's what really helped us get out of spreadsheets.
Great, so that's an awesome answer. Really appreciate that. I think we got maybe one or two more time left for. So this is a question. So for your spend within Allocadia, what level are you tracking spend? And then, in terms of channel, campaign, and then specifically, how do you handle paid search where there's a single monthly bill that can be allocated, but it's hard to divvy it up, so to speak? How do you handle that?
So we get pretty granular with our spend in terms of the granularity of tracking it. Because we are leveraging those metadata fields, we're able to slice and dice the spend data any way we want. For example, one of our metadata fields is theme, which is kind of the broad definition of campaign from a serious decision perspective. It's the overall message that we're going to market with. So very easily in our ROI dashboards, we can just aggregate all line items by each theme and then look at ROI that way. But because we do have a single Salesforce campaign associated to every single line item, we can get pretty granular and pretty precise with that. So within SEM, to use that as an example, I'm sure anyone that's executing SEM campaigns, we spend a lot of money and it's on a single invoice to your vendor, but we're able to get pretty granular with the PO. So we might have a single PO that goes to Google or Bing or whoever it is, but that PO is going to have several line items. Each of those line items can be associated to a different Allocadia line. So even though it's a single big bill each month, we're able to get pretty granular on where those dollars went.
That's a great answer, and we've got a couple of other customers who take that on in a similar fashion. And when I look at kind of what you've done and some of the power of Allocadia just around the I, let alone bringing the R and the I together, it's that ability to get into those metadata fields, to slice and dice and get a level of granularity that is literally impossible with spreadsheets or through financial systems, just because they don't break it out that way. This question actually kind of ties on to this a bit. It was about there's you talk about Salesforce connection or API, and I'll actually answer this one. What other integrations does that Allocadia have? If somebody asked us around like Coupa. So for Allocadia, we'll integrate to PO systems. We also integrate to project management or asset management systems like a Workfront or Percolate. We'll integrate with Salesforce, obviously, but then also marketing automation and point of sale systems as well. So think about the Eloquas or the Oracles, the Marketos of the world. And then, Tim, you talked about Google AdWords or whatnot. We'll also have direct integrations into Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google Ads, and that's really just where it starts. We've got over 40 different integrations within Allocadia. Thank you for that question. Let's see. Let's finish off with this last question here. There's a few questions hanging out there around kind of transformation. You already asked one of those. Maybe you could just leave everybody with your top 2 or 3 tips when you're taking on a project like this, specifically in a marketing organization with over 100 marketers. What would you say are the importance to drive that change so you can get a system up and running in 2 to 3 months like you did?
Yeah, so I think the biggest piece of advice I have is get the right people involved early and keep them involved often. On the attribution side, it's important that everyone sees the model as fair and has a way to provide their input and feedback on how the model's shaping up. And then on the spend side, it's also important to find out what type of data you need. I touched on making sure you're asking the right questions around ROI. And that really dictated all of our metadata fields so that we knew, because we knew the question we wanted to answer, so we implemented Allocadia accordingly so we could answer those questions. And additionally, I think making sure that each end user has access to the analytics and to the insights. Using or implementing this type of software and using it, it's not easy. It does take work. There is a certain level of data entry, but you have to put good data into the system to get good insights out. No matter what tool you use, there's no way of getting around that fact. So it's important that you make these ROI dashboards or even these Allocadia dashboards available to the marketers so that each end user can see the benefits of the analysis and they don't feel like they're just aimlessly putting data into the system. So we have, our Tableau dashboards are published and available for anyone to look at. And so each person can use filters to see how their campaigns are performing, the ROI of their campaigns, but also the ROI of the business, or ROI by country, by theme, by sales segment. So again, it's important to make sure that everyone can leverage the insights that these types of systems and processes generate.
Great, that's super helpful. And if I was just to kind of summarize, I'd say get buy-in early, give visibility to people across the board. So you get the right people on the bus, and then you keep everyone visible and aware of what the output is. Awesome.